Okay, looks like we're recording. Brilliant. And Gemini is taking notes. We're getting all the good stuff. And I just noticed that people are beginning to wander into the waiting room, which is the other nice thing. Like you can actually set this up as, you have like a little wait room and you can bring them in when we're ready. Give it another minute. Yeah, I have to say, I like the way Google has caught up on all the functionality. And now, I mean, honestly, like I'm already paying for Google Workspace. Might as well use all the tools.
I know. And for a long time, I mean, people know on the team that I'm like Zoom preferential because I thought the tooling was so much better, but now you're opening my mind.
Just saying.
Just saying. Here.
All right, it is 10:30 my time, so I'm going to admit our first friends.
Let's do it.
And it's going to take a minute for everybody to trickle in. But hello, friends. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Eric, hey, why are you on screen? That is not what's supposed to happen. I am going to boot you off screen. Somehow. That is not what's supposed to happen, but I don't want to boot you. Well, there I was bragging about my prowess with Google. Eric, can I ask you what link you came in on? Did you just wander in through the... Oh, shoot.
Yeah, I think this, let's see. I'm not sure if I'm... It came in across my phone, so I'm not sure that I had access to everything. So this is through, I think it was the Luma link. So
yeah,
sorry about that. Why don't I just kill my video and just put myself on mute?
Trying to get everybody I'm trying to get everybody off screen like we did before. Yep. And but if I remove you from the... Oh, shoot. See now there? I have discovered a problem with Google, or maybe it's an operator error, which is what it sounds like. Well, sorry, Britt. This is apparently the meeting where I screwed up.
Oh, please! You can't screw up, Astrid. It's just friends talking about how to build better businesses.
Yeah, except now we're going to be joined by 20 other friends.
It's a learning experience.
It's all right. We just keep hiding. Just keep hiding, friends.
Yeah, I don't want to kick anybody out, but somehow I inadvertently made you all co-contributors, which is actually not the goal. Hi, Salam. It's lovely to see you. Also, I don't want to be seeing you because I'm an introvert. I was explaining to Britt the reason I've set this up the way I did is so I don't have to look at 20 faces because it makes me really very uncomfortable. And apparently this is the meeting where I got it wrong. So thanks for going off camera, Salam. Much appreciated. If everybody could go off camera, that would be everybody but Britt and me. That would be great. Here I was trying to sell you on Google Meet as the alternative to Zoom, and it's already screwing with me.
I think it all works. It all works.
It's all going to be okay.
Yeah, it will be.
And for everybody who's joining, so if you haven't caught on, I goofed somehow and made you all co-contributors, which is not the intent. And I'm actually trying to ignore the chat. And please take yourself off video, Asya, because again, this is an operator error on my part. What I'm hoping you will do is instead of using the chat, there is a Q&A functionality. If you look at the lower right corner of your screen, you should see like 9 dots sort of stacked on top of each other, the meeting tools. And if you you should see a Q&A box, and that's ideally the tool to use. And then you'll see it pops up a new question in Q&A, and you can upvote it and interact with it. But that's my preferred way to collect questions. And thank you, Asya, for modeling the emojis, which is the other preferred way for us, or for me, to interact with everyone. And I'll say it again for everybody. It's going to have to say this a few times now as people wander in, kind of wondering why the hell they're on screen. It's because I screwed up and made you all co-contributors somehow. So hi, Vlada, please take yourself off video. so my poor introverted self doesn't get overwhelmed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And this will happen a few times. All right, well, let's just get going. We have enough people here, and maybe I'll pin you. How about I'm going to pin your tile. There you go. Haha. So you're
Wow.
front and center.
I was like, I feel like I should pin you.
I don't know. Maybe you can. I don't know. Can we pin each other? It's awesome to have you back in my virtual space. You were just visiting. Hope everybody is well at home.
Yes. It's so nice to be here. Thank you, Astrid. And I pinned you, so I think we're dual screen. We did the thing.
Excellent. Good enough. And yeah, so let's just hop into it and talk about your journey as an entrepreneur. Like, you're a business owner. You have thoughts about org charts. I think everybody who's here knows roughly what we're talking about. But today's topic is basically the org chart is dead. Long live the organization. So I'd like to back into it just by have you give a little bit of background on who you are as a person and where your entrepreneurial journey. It's highs and lows.
Highs and lows. Oh,
lows and highs.
Should that be the entire 25 minutes of this? The rest of our time.
Oh, the next 3 hours. I think people know that this is basically a half-day event.
Exactly. That's where we're focused on. Well, so funny enough, I started my career in the music business in a very specialized role, obviously specialized domain. And then I had an opportunity probably 7 or 8 years into my career to start a startup for an international songwriter. I didn't have a title. I was one of 3 people on the team, and they were like, can you wear all the hats alongside this founder and bring this organization from 0 to 1 to help build this from nothing to something? And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I will try. I'm a curious human. I'm really excited about this. Let me see. And I loved that type of work. I loved being the all hands doer across the organization when there was no org chart, when there weren't enough people to fill in every single box. And so from there, I sort of left turned and went domain agnostic and followed the startup thread. So you can consider that traditional B2B SaaS startup where I had traditional B2B SaaS roles, and also other startups like the local brick and mortar gym that was expanding locations and needed a VP of operations, and what that meant, nobody knew, but it had a lot of titles across the traditional org chart. So after living this life where I was building organizations, building businesses from 0 to 1 alongside the founder in this generalist operator role, I saw these incredible businesses that all they needed were hands and hearts to be able to build. And sometimes they knew what the work was going to be that they were bringing in people to do the work for, but a lot of times they didn't. Mm-hmm. And so this like generalist operator role was so important, but it wasn't codified. This was also at a time, especially in startups, where like this chief of staff role has started to come to be, where like there was a little bit of this like codification of the generalist operator, but not enough that people felt like, or at least that I had felt coming from a different career path, that it was accessible for businesses to be able to have this type of person on their team, bring them in meaningfully and know where to put them. And then I was one of these people, and I was like, this is not just me that kind of like loves working in this way, but doesn't necessarily have a home in a traditional career path in the org chart, but I want to do more of this. And so that's what, you know, as founders do, you solve your own problem. A lot of what I was doing on these early stage teams and small businesses was building out the team. It was one of my core competencies of the work I was doing: operations, growth, and team building. And I was like, could I take all those things that I have a very strong skill set in and build another operating model? Is there another way to build businesses from the beginning that feels very human, that feels very supportive, that allows people to change as the work changes, leveraging this human that is the generalist operator that can flex along the way? And so that's what led me to starting Of All Trades 4 years ago was, can we build a different type of company that is like a stable home for the generalist operator to work with businesses? And also, can we help businesses build better, more meaningfully, by not being so afraid of changing because they have a really dynamic organizational structure that allows them to grow and change over time?
Yeah, I kind of backed into the sort of same dynamic or the same pattern through a different path, right? So I came out of a nonprofit, good sized nonprofit, like 70 staff. I was the CEO, and we had specialists for everything, right? Like I had a CFO, you had a controller under the CFO, you had accountants under the controller, under the CFO, right? And you had all these designated specialists all over the organization. And I went from that to being the founder and CEO, I put it in air quotes, of a tech startup. And it's immediately obvious that you just don't have the resources. I mean, maybe there are people, magical people who don't look like you or me, who get lots of VC thrown at them, and then they can hire for all the specialists. But my experience was that if I tried to replicate the sort of org chart that I was familiar with, but in a startup, I would be out of money very, very quickly. And I actually changed my business card to say Chief Everything Officer, because
That's so wild.
kind of a janitor, right? Like you're doing everything in an early stage business.
Yeah.
And by the same token, like people who came into this startup, I also, like every single one, like my instinct was to say, what else can you do? Oh, it's nice that you're the Chief Technology Officer, but you also understand communications, great, right? Or you have written policy manuals for the next round of people we're bringing on, awesome. And so I just didn't have a name for it, right? Like I sort of made this self-deprecating joke about myself, like, oh, I'm the Chief Everything Officer, whoop-de-doo,
Yeah.
But then when you and I met, I was like, oh no, it's a thing. It's totally a thing, and not just in underfunded startups, just in any startup, in any new business, right? And so I that's why I'm so intrigued with your business model and the business you're building at of all trades, because I see a lot of founders or business owners fall into the trap of, and how many times have you heard a version of like, oh, now I have to hire the sales expert, or now I have to hire a chief marketing officer, right? So talk a little bit about some of these pitfalls that you see in businesses that are sort of the, shall we say, old org chart type mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to start with where the org chart came from, which is from the 1800s with a railroad engineer that was designing clear inputs to clear outputs for humans to do work like machines. And we have not graduated from that at all. Just like you were saying in terms of how hiring, when you hire a CTO, you say, what are the core competencies that fall peripherally to that CTO? There's always stuff that falls outside of the org chart, because we are not machines. Now, obviously, like fast forward to this moment with AI, like we'll get there. But
they will be machines again. No.
Right? Here we go. But in a good way. I actually think there's a lot in terms of the org chart and restructuring around humans and technology in this moment that's supportive to human work in like a different way. But I think what happens is people say, okay, I have functions of an organization and I have levels of specialized skills, and I have a certain capacity, which should be full-time, like for those boxes, right? And we forget all of the permutations outside of that are possible. If you are a small growing business, if you're a startup, like you said, that is just innately known, but that's true for nonprofits. That's true for the local dentist down the street that we work with. That's true for the small branding agency that we work. Like we work with so many different types of companies, because that is just what's true, is you realize that the work falls outside of the org chart if you're not thinking about it by function, by FTE, and by level. And so how do you rethink that? It's okay. And you think about it from the specialist versus the generalist lens. What requires more breadth? where is the work moving, where you can have a generalist move along with the work, and where is there an actual clear input and an output that requires a specialist. So that's like one lens we don't typically put on. Another that is becoming more prescient right now is rote versus judgment work. So rote is the work that the railroad org chart was designed for: clear inputs, clear outputs. That is something that when you have that, like deeply, you can put a specialist to. That can be a specialist human, or now it might be a specialist non-human. But then the work that doesn't have clear inputs and outputs, that is judgment work, that's generalist work, that's human work that takes discernment. And so if you restructure your org thinking about it that way, that can be another toggle. And then the last piece that I think people have the lens for, but they have only thought about it in a leveling type of way, is fractional work. Because you could have a full-time employee, you can have a fractional resource. Fractional resourcing is great if you don't have enough capital to put a person in a seat. But most of the time we think about that from more like a consulting or a specialist lens, not necessarily like a doer, an actual doer that can be broad in that work. And if you do that, then you can obviously think outside of the traditional org chart and get a lot more done too.
I'm still stuck on your comment from like 4 minutes ago about how this goes back
Ashley,
to like
very exciting.
18th century or 1800s railroad. Like, oh,
I know.
It is so prevalent, right? Like how here we are in the 21st century and we have these completely unexamined or under-examined like structural habits, right? It's not even, I mean, there's all the blatantly problematic structures, right, that are shaping our lives.
Totally.
But then when it comes to like the way businesses are run, right, they're still run business as usual, circa 1858.
Completely. And I think the reason for that is people are afraid of change and they need structure. Like I think the model that we've been able to build in practice, like around this concept of the generalist operator, this like dynamic teaming where you can build a different type of team, it's not like lacking any hierarchy. It's not lacking like, it's not just like a free form amoeba, but I like to think that if you build Slack in a system, it can move with you. And that system had no Slack in it, and things are changing so much. They've always changed for small nonprofits. They've always changed, but we haven't designed any systems to change with it. And the pace of change is picking up so quickly that now we can't ignore that. Like we can't ignore that anymore.
I actually want to put a double click on that what you just said, right? Because nonprofits have to be agile for different reasons than early stage tech startups, and the patterns are the same, right? Like you need to be responsive to sort of the market conditions and or to the changing regulatory environment, which of course currently is a complete shit show, especially for nonprofits, a technical term here. That agility is not something that sort of the usual, having somebody I'm trying to admit while I'm talking, that's always fun. But it's not designed to do, right? And so we have this tension between how nonprofits or small business or early stage businesses, Ted, please take you off video. It was an operator error on my part that people are coming in and on screen. It's this interesting mismatch, right, between the agility that this moment requires, or that an early stage company requires, and sort of the rigidity of the org chart, right? Really an important thing I wanted to just pull on for a moment.
Totally. And I mean, I think about agile methodology, like that came up through the prevalence of tech companies that needed to be more nimble because they knew they needed to be more nimble. But that is a project methodology. That's not an operating model. And we haven't taken that and expanded it out, because the idea, like a lot of people go, how do you put something like this into practice? Because constantly changing feels like chaos. It is utter chaos. Not if you do it systematically and thoughtfully and you're restructuring what you think about. It feels scary because we've been doing things the same way and that feels comforting to us. But actually, I think embracing change is what is safer now, because then you can meet it, you know?
So we had this at the organization that I used to run. We had this thing about, you know, people who work here need to have a high tolerance for ambiguity. And it sounds a bit like that you're building your business on a similar principle. So talk about how Off All Trade works and how you take sort of the agile mindset into the operating system of a company.
Yeah. So we're typically working with early stage startups or companies that, again, don't have a person in every seat. And if they do, they might be looking for, they're trying to solve a specific problem, right? Like every person when they're hiring is trying to get a thing done and solve a specific problem. But what happens is they think they only have a finite number of solutions to do that. I'll hire like a fractional or freelance specialist. I will hire a full-time employee to do 9 roles, or I will hire a full-time employee to do 1 role and be like sorely disappointed, but it's fine because at least I have a butt in the seat. When we are having a conversation, or I'm having a conversation with the teams we serve, it is as much as our internal team calls it talent therapy, and actually consulting around what does it mean to rethink the resourcing and your capacity resourcing outside of the traditional org chart, as much as it is for us to then say, awesome, we have a team of generalists. We're going to bring this person and embed them on your team to do this work. They're going to feel like a member of the team. They're going to wear 3 hats, and every 3 months, they're going to change their hats as the work changes alongside you. And so in that way, it's really nice because as I get to talk to leaders of teams, they are not sure how to solve this acute problem that they have, where they have not enough resources, need more hands, and want to build something meaningful. And to say to them, awesome, let me understand what that means. Let me give you a different option to be able to have a person on your team. And then we like start as an agency, then we transition to more the marketplace, where we have a couple curated generalists that we think would be really great to be part of your team. And then once that person is on your team, we become an operating partner to you. And over time, we are the ones that are like, you're outsourcing the ambiguity of who to hire to. We're constantly supporting you as your org structure changes, and like contracting out the generalist that's doing the work. And then over time, we help change. So you might have the same generalist on your team that's changing the work that's happening within their work over time. You might have multiple generalists on your team. We've seen it so many different ways. Like we had a foundation we did work for where they funded us because they were merging 2 nonprofits. It started out with 1 journalist. They had then 7 by the end of it, because they needed to like really ramp up in the moment, and we could meet that moment very seamlessly. Or the early stage startup that had 2 founders and 2 engineers and 2 generalists that wore 7 hats to get them from like their pre-seed to seed round. But it's us being able to deploy a person, support from a consultative standpoint to make sure that they're really resourcing appropriately, and then making those changes over time. I've been in business almost 5 years. I have a couple of the same clients who we started with, like piloted. Wow. Just like such a special thing for me to say, like, how many moments of change have we been able to meet them through, you know?
And would you say that, are you able to say like, oh, there is a regular cadence, like every 3 months, or is it faster than that people need to make pivots and adjustments in their hat makeup of their journalist?
Yeah, it's so team dependent. We operate in the quarterly cadence, as you would feel like a traditional QBR, like 30, 60, 90 day employee plan, right? Because these are known systems that people feel really good iterating around. But we've had founders that are like, hey, we've done this for 2 months, and oh my gosh, we need more. Oh my gosh, we need less. Oh my gosh, we need different. It's our responsibility to meet that as their partner, to be like, great, let's figure out how to realign our resources. And in the spirit of being a generalist, we don't have functions. Like, we don't have a customer success function. We don't have an operations function, but we have one person in the role of what we call alignment. And she is aligning finance, customer success, and operations. Those three things are her role because they touch each other in a work team, and they're like thoughtfully orchestrated so that like that is the work that gets done meaningfully, you know?
Amazing. So I think I'm a generalist. I think
You are a generalist, actually. You're 100% a generalist.
I'm like, wait, all these years that people have said stuff to me like, oh, how can you wear so many different hats? I'm like, isn't that just what you do? So you were basically saying I have a whole company of people like us who are comfortable wearing multiple hats. Can you give us, just sort of anonymously, obviously, I don't name names, but what are some sort of charismatic makeups of people who have sort of, like you were just mentioning, one sort of skill set, like what are some other combinations of skills that people bring into a generalist role?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting because they will have a constellation of functional skills. So that makes it easy to match a specific problem with a specific solution. If a founder comes to me and says, well, I need to stand up marketing and sales and operations, that's great because I'm going to have somebody who can do those functional things. Outside of it, from the human standpoint, like a spirit of curiosity, a willingness to roll up your sleeves and do as much as you want to strategize. That like learning by doing heart, like the excitement around that is really important. One of the biggest things too is unlearning. Literally like an hour ago, we just had a team meeting that one of our journalists led, and he like pulled up his PowerPoint presentation and it was unlearning go-to-market. And it was like, that's what we're talking about today, is unlearning go-to-market, because the way that everybody's been doing it is not working. And so let's co-create what this could look like moving forward. Like that type of thinking is really what changes businesses, you know, for the better.
Well, we're actually going to have a chat. I think Amy is in the audience with Amy Germain about going to market. That's not working. So stay tuned. That's an upcoming virtual fireside chat. And I'm about to pivot to some of the questions that people have submitted ahead of time. And everybody else, if you have questions now, please use that Q&A function. Bottom right, we see the 9 dots that should pull up, or I think now there should be like a purple interactive question mark at the top of your screen, perhaps. So feel free to put additional questions in there. People are still trickling in. This is just all right. Fine. Join us whenever you're joining us. You're welcome. Just please go off screen because yours truly had an operator error or a blonde moment today, and that's just what happened. All right. So people had some really good questions that we're going to pivot to. I always love it when people register and come with questions. So makes my job very much easier. But they also turn out to be lining up with questions I had for you. So this is perfect.
Perfect.
Talk about how leaders make the transition from an org chart to a dynamic team.
Not immediately, because are afraid. Don't do that. There is an audit process that is, you know, probably pretty standard to what people would know of like a traditional project management audit process, to be able to identify the work that's happening outside of the org chart and then transitioning it. But I like to think of it in phases of, you probably have someone on your team that is a generalist, can do more of the in-between work that's happening. How do you shift that person that might be in a box into an area of the org that picks up all the ambiguous stuff, and then like really gives slack to all the people that are already in the org chart that need to be doing very specific work. Just that restructuring simply of who are the generalists versus the specialists on our team. What is the rote work, the consistent work with clear inputs and outputs, and making sure the specialists are doing that work. And then anything that is more judgment work that doesn't have a clear outcome, that requires the learning and development and the unlearning, that goes to the generalist. So if you just start there, that can be a really supportive way of like, you don't have a generalist on the team, we do bring in a generalist that can be supportive as a starting point. Once you get the hang of it, and you start to work in this way, you'll find that you can continue to build your team around the work, and it becomes less scary because you've done it more than once and you're like, oh, this is actually a thoughtful way to build my business and team.
I'm curious, Britt, do you see a difference in how nonprofit and for-profit companies meet that transition? Do you have enough data points to talk about that?
Not meaningfully in that. I think, how do I say this? Every type of business has its own constraints. So like nonprofits and how they're structured are obviously different than how startups are structured. But I think what we're doing is separating out the traditional org chart for a nonprofit versus the traditional org chart of a startup, and separating that out into generalist, specialist, rote work, and judgment work. Well, contextually, that will be different for both. From like categorically, it's not. And so I don't see a meaningful difference other than people's interest in like traditional tech startup is like, yeah, let's change quickly. And sometimes nonprofits are like, yeah, we want to change, but there's so much constraint around change, it feels harder. So like it's more that than the actual methodology of disrupting the org chart as it stands for either.
Yeah, and I was mainly thinking about like some of the nonprofits I'm familiar with. Like I think the executive director would potentially face some scrutiny from a board of directors, for example, right? Oh, but this isn't the way we have done things. What do you mean we don't have a designated CFO anymore, or whatever, right? What does that mean? This person who does alignment, never heard of it. So I'm just curious if that's like, I was more thinking about along those terms. Like, is there, because there's maybe sort of a different level of scrutiny that people face in the leadership seat. You know, they might decide, oh, this is actually the right way for us to move, but then they have to navigate some board politics around it that maybe a for-profit founder doesn't face so much.
Totally. I mean, I do think that there's pressure for startups from their VC to build a certain way.
There's that, right?
That is real. They're like, wait, I'm sorry, what? Like, how many engineers do you have, and how many SDRs do you have? Full stop. And so sometimes we are like, you know, the carrots that are baked into a brownie, where we function as a customer success operator, but the customer success operator that is through of all trades also is doing sales and also is doing operations and is also building you AI agents. So like, how can they do all the things? Everybody's happy. Once then, you know, it's like a bottoms up approach. Once then we are doing this work meaningfully, and the teams we serve are like, this is great. Look how dynamically I can move. Look how supported I feel. Nonprofit boards, VCs, anybody that's at the top can't argue with the impact that we make. Right. And therefore, then it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess this was a lower cost and more nimble way to build. Cool, let's keep doing it, you know?
Yeah, love that. Also, tell me you're the parent of an 8-year-old without telling me you're the parent of an 8-year-old. Baking carrots into brownies.
Maybe just a little bit.
Love that. I had another great question about org charts. Org charts help delineate ownership and responsibility. In the new paradigm, how do you think about ownership, responsibility, and accountability when some of the work is being driven by agents?
Yes.
Human and non-human. I'm going to add. I'm just going to expand on that because I think that works.
I really like to put the rote versus judgment work lens on that, because if you have agents and specialists doing that consistent rote work and you have the generalists doing the judgment work, there's something that's really interesting that's brewing with AI agents with this AI orchestrator role. It's something we've actually, like a hat we've worn on teams, but it's like starting to be in the ecosystem now, where if you are a traditional project manager or an operator, somebody who knows this technology, but also knows change management and knows how teams work, like you might also have a people and culture background, you are perfect for this role. And so there is this like orchestrator layer that becomes really important. It's less about who owns the function and who is responsible for the outcome of the work. And so I think there is something really meaningful about having a human work alongside agents in the in ensuring that there is quality, like ensuring that that work is being done meaningfully. But some of the traditional like decision, like a traditional like decision maker matrix or a Rossi chart, like these tools that typically help people with accountability and ownership are also a nice layer to this as people get started, because they're like, oh, okay, it feels really clear. We have boxes to hold on to that aren't the org chart boxes. And now over time, we can let that go when we've watched how humans are orchestrating the AI, how teams are forming around problems and solving problems, and how that is actually okay. It doesn't require as much thoughtful attention.
So you have sounds like that's just a known to you now process, like making that transition and maintaining ownership and responsibility and accountability.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the humans are the ones that are gonna, at least right now, the humans are the ones that have to be the owners of that.
I don't want to take us down a complete AI rabbit hole, but I'm curious about this idea that there are rote tasks, right, that could be done by well-trained, well-instructed AI agents. Has your company developed some sort of guardrails or frameworks that your clients can use to help understand how to put the human oversight into the system properly, right? Like, I mean, there is this horrible way of using AI and human in the loop, where the human is sort of subservient to the AI. And I've heard this described like, what is it? Are you the I'm going to mangle this. Somebody else can maybe put it in the chat, but there's are you the rider, or are you the centaur, or are you the horse, are you the centaur, whatever, like, you know where I'm going with this. Like, are you driving the AI, or are you being driven by the AI, right? Like the Amazon truck driver who's being supervised by friggin' AI is not using human discernment. He's being treated as a cog in this now AI overlord driven machine. But what you're talking about is much more thank you, reverse centaur, body of human, head of horse.
Yeah.
and that's so like, how do you do it right? Like, how's the correct way to constellate that, configure that, and then how do you appropriately recognize and reward the human role in the system? Because these are like, all of a sudden, I mean, and part of what I'm observing is it may be ironically that the highest compensated humans, the computer engineers, are the first to fall out of jobs, because some of their work is the most rote that can be replaced potentially. And you might need the people who have more the product view, or have more the humanities training, who are actually more valuable in terms of what's now required to supervise the machines correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It kind of comes down to, do you need more generalists or do you need more specialists in this world right now with AI? And I think we always get it wrong when it's binary thinking. Like, we only need specialists, but generalists don't matter. Now we only need generalists and like people with depth, but the specialists don't matter. How will the generalists know exactly how technical, like how right an AI is? Like, you do need that specialty layer, certainly. And to go back to the like start of the question around what is the right way, I'm one to more, maybe it's my generalist self, but like, reject the right way as if there is a global way. Building a great business means, what is best for my business, my constellation of humans and technology, the mission that I am trying to serve in this moment in the world. All of those things are their unique cocktail. And that parlays to AI. Where I think people are getting caught up, I'll say, and maybe can do it wrong, is thinking about implementing AI with like an engineering mindset instead of an operator mindset. And that's where we fundamentally are different, because we are not only building the technology, but we're operating alongside the teams and then continuing to iterate to make sure that it's actually working for everybody. And if you miss that and it's more of like the agency engineer, all right, we're going to build this weird technology that changes constantly that nobody still really knows totally about, and then leave. That's when things can often go wrong.
Right. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. And actually, I think I'm sort of, as some people who know me know, I'm sort of a cautiously optimistic and more pragmatic, really, adopter of AI for some of these processes in sort of business, right? Like one thing where I think there's a great use case is actually around documentation of processes in an organization, in a company, which is always underinvested in. And I can't tell you, I left my job at this big nonprofit like 10 plus years ago. The phone has finally stopped ringing to answer questions about like knowledge management projects that I did 20 years ago. But I mean, for the longest time, like that was the answer. You just have to call, you have to find the human that used to work for you years ago to help decipher. I know, I mean, so there are definitely applications for AI that I can't wait for more companies to adopt. But while we're on this theme of adoption of AI, there's a great question in the Q&A about insurance companies that are unwilling to provide insurance cover if any of the processes involve any form of AI. How will this affect adoption and use of AI? And while you think about your answer to this, I'll just reflect on the experience I've had. I've been, for better or for worse, I've been an early adopter of technology my entire life. I mean, my claim to fame is that, yes, I've coded, of course, when it was HTML2. That's the last time I wrote code. But technically, I was a coder. But I remember in grad school, and mind you, grad school is like the mid to late 90s for me. Like when I was an early adopter of PowerPoint presentations, which you projected against the white screen that was being used to show acetates. Give me a thumbs up if you know what that is, like an actual overhead projector where you had to sort of hand draw or print, right? There's some thumbs coming. Yep, there, I see you, my Gen Xers. So that was a thing, right? And I distinctly remember being like getting the side eye in the poli-sci department at UC Berkeley, where I was giving a guest presentation about my dissertation research for using a PowerPoint, because clearly that made me an unserious person and quite likely not an academic, a proper academic, right? So that's what that question triggered for me, right? Like this idea that somehow like this new technology is inherently problematic and can't be taken serious by the status quo. So you probably have a better answer to the insurance.
No, that answer was perfect. And I'm mostly excited that you brought up the projector, because I have also such good memories of that. It's nice to bring that into the conversation. That's good. I think it goes with any technology adoption. I think some of this moment in time mirrors the early days of SaaS, except faster. And so I think that people have particular ways of being open to this, and it's swayed by policy, it's swayed by media, it's swayed by trust in their previous experiences they had, and it's all those things together that allow for people to adopt or not adopt it. And so obviously something like insurance companies are going to be meaningfully slower than adopting this like an early stage tech startup would. But I think it's really from what, in talking to other founders, whether they are clients of ours or just founders in the ecosystem that are talking about this right now, it's how can you meaningfully use what's here now as a tool? And if it doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like a tool that's going to help you in the moment, don't do it. You're not going to be behind it.
Yeah.
You know, learn about it, understand what's happening. Don't let the gap be so wide that you feel like now you don't have an understanding, you can't communicate in this changing world of work. but allow your adoption to find its way in whatever you feel like it actually is meaningful. You don't have to do it because it needs, everybody's doing it. It's like, if it's helping you, great. If it doesn't help you yet, that's fine. Just know about it until the moment that it could be helpful to you.
I love that. Do you think, right now you have a company that employs humans that go into businesses as generalists. Do you foresee a moment in your trajectory where you're basically hiring out AI agents as a service?
Like, I already know your question. We've been talking about this a while as an organization, because we are building agents and we're building products and we're meeting this moment as like being a service product business. There's not as much conversation, I will say, around ways impactfully to make human work better. We are so focused on efficiency and productivity, and where AI sits, we're forgetting the human part. And again, we go back to binary thinking. Either AI takes all of the jobs or none of the jobs. What if it just changes how we work meaningfully with each other? Right. What if there are just other ways that we can celebrate the human gifts that we have, allow humans to work meaningfully, like true agreements with each other that can change over time? Isn't that what original company work was? And so I say this all the time to our team, and I'm very lucky to have a team that supports it, is like, we are human first. We are AI adopters, but we are human first. We always will be. And the whole point of why we exist is to continue to be humans helping humans in the best way possible to build in better ways.
Yeah, I love that. And some of the humans may come with an AI sidekick, right? Like I've created a little AI sidekick for myself to help me with like social media marketing because I suck at it. And I was facing like this huge inner hurdle, like, telling me that I'm crap at it because you really need to be a millennial or better Gen Zer, to be any good at it. I'm like, you know what? Or I can just tell the AI. That's its persona.
And it's superpowering you as a human, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But I think, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago when the chatter got crazy and it was really, really loud. So much of it was around one human can build $1 billion company with all the agents. And I was like, that doesn't feel like a fun way to spend life, like by myself with all of these agents. I want to build with humans. I want to create. I want to co-create. Why are we doing this to begin with? Like, I think people meaningfully, the founders and leaders that we serve are the ones that are trying to make the world better, are building businesses innovatively to affect change. If we can support them doing that in a different way, we're doing it right.
I'm going to get us off the AI again because again, we're not going to talk about it. Humans first and foremost. There was a great question that came in that seemed a little specialized. So I pasted it into the Q&A. Are you familiar with EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, and their use of the accountability chart as a replacement for the org chart? How might the accountability chart fit into an org chartless world? And I'm going to ask you to give us a bit of a definition of what we're talking about here, because that was all news to me.
Yes, I'm familiar with it as a methodology. Really what it does is it creates a role called the integrator. And the integrator role is the orchestrator role. It's the person that essentially can wear a lot of hats across things and make sure that cross-functionally things are operating effectively. But that is a specialized function. You're still putting people and things into boxes. I have seen generalists that are integrators that fall into product, customer success, and marketing, and board operations, and grant writing. It doesn't matter. I think that methodology is like taking the integrator out and saying the only path forward to meaningfully work in this way is to have the chief of staff role. And I just haven't seen that to be true. And so it is a meaningful step in the right direction to separate yourself out from a functional org chart. However, it's still like in dynamic teaming, you're going from who owns this function to who is responsible for the outcome of the work. that's different, and that changes as the work changes and should be redefined as the work changes, as the workflows change. It doesn't have to be hierarchical, but there should be some sort of structure over time that shifts so that it is not total chaos, but there's enough structure that people can hold on to, that they understand what they're accountable to. But it's still, it's like, imagine it 3 levels deeper than where EOS started, just because they're changing so much since when EOS was
also, what that reminds me of is, you know, I mean, whether you call them that, I mean, there's always a person who has that role in an organization, it seems. And I'm reminded of my former executive assistant who was that person for the nonprofit. And when she was really cute, she said, "Oh, I'm not going to retire while you're president." And then I left, and she's like, I'm going to retire now. And the poor woman was being hounded by the founder who came back as executive chair after I left. And like, he was forever begging her to please come back, even on a part-time basis, because she was that consummate integrator and sort of holder of some of this interstitial type knowledge. And what a horrible fate, like, to have to be the designated, it's a bit like the designated survivor, you know, like at the State of the Union address. It's like, what a horrible role, like, to be like the all the things run through your brain. And, you know, God forbid something happens to you, or, you know, like Ophelia, you want to retire at some point.
And or a wonderful role if you can design a system that allows you to pass it off to the right person to work.
Oh, there's that, right? And
right. I think that's what it is. It's like, there are people, the generalists love that hat, but not forever. They want a different constellation of that hat over time. And if we're doing it right, that should change, you know?
There's actually a great application of AI that I've seen coming out of India. It's a company called Apurva AI, and they've been working with a 30-year-old social enterprise where the AI got trained on all the internal documentation and principles and projects and everything. And they're using it, among other things, to show up as that institutional memory. And so Apurva, she named herself because that's what they do now, shows up and says, "Well, Britt, well, we tried that 20 years ago, but now things are different. It might be worth trying again," or how does this align with our mission? And so they use it for everything from like training new staff to what have you. But that, I think that's actually back to the AI, an interesting use case, sort of the internal.
And there's the rote work versus judgment work. It's not saying here's the decision. It's saying here's the body of information. You as a human, we've taken decision fatigue and lessened it generously, because that's all you are, right? As a founder, it's just a constant state of decision fatigue. So if you can give AI enough information to just distill information so that you have discernment, that you can make that meaningful decision, whether you are the leader of an organization or any other human doing the work, then you're actually building technology to supercharge the human, not to replace them. You know?
So we have about 10 minutes left. So folks who are listening, pop any other questions that you might have into the Q&A. There was one question that came in that was a little bit off topic for us today. It was about the alternatives to board of director structures that are more inclusive and suitable for mission-driven orgs. I am going to punt on that because I'm actually shaping up a virtual fireside chat just like this on questions of governance. So you don't have to be in the hot seat on that one, Britt, because I know that's not your sweet spot.
I was like, although I do see some OAT friends in the room that could speak to it, but as a journalist,
we'll have a whole dedicated hour on just governance, because that's a whole like ball of wax in this brave new world of mission-driven organizations and companies. So talk a little bit about how people can interact, like how does an engagement with OAT start? How do people come to you and sort of get into a conversation?
Humans helping humans. It's as simple as a conversation with me. It is really important that we are coming from this space in the beginning of talking to a leader, of empathetic listening, of saying, what in the world is going on? What's making it hard to do this work meaningfully? Well, tell me what you need. Tell me what you're feeling. What's going on internally? Because we might be able to create a solution for you, i.e. bring in a generalist to support the work on your team in a different way than you knew was possible. And so really that like initial conversation about what would it mean to bring dynamic teaming as a practice into your organization is where it starts. And I use that as a diagnostic. I think it, if anything, just the conversation opens up a meaningfully different way of people thinking about their organization. From there, oftentimes directly in that conversation, I've been doing it long enough, it is my specialty, that I can say, you know what I think you need? I think you need Kelsey. I think you need Mark. I think you need one of these two people that have a little bit of the competencies you're asking for. But trust me, when you meet them, like I think when you have a conversation with them, you'll understand that this type of person doing this work can actually make an impact in a way you didn't even think was possible. So from that, then what typically I'll do is introduce the humans to the other humans that are doing the work. They'll like tactically meet a few different generalists as part of all trades for us to learn more about them, and for them to learn more about us and see where there is a fit. Because technically we become part of teams, we're embedded operators within organizations, that fit really matters. That like that connection, that reciprocity is important on both sides, so important. And so that conversation is not an interview. It's co-creation in a way.
Got it.
And from those conversations, then I will then go back to the, founder or leader and say, what do you think? How could this be beneficial to you? If they say, you know what, I really think Mark is my person. I can just feel like he can jump in and do this with me. Then I provide a few different options of what it means to actually move forward with somebody on their team. A random fuzzy scope of stuff, always a level of capacity, like a few different options that can kind of meet the moment so that leaders feel like they have the right team at the right time. And then from there, once we move forward, like we are pretty bullish on non-houred, like flat fee pricing so that it's manageable for a P&L. It's like thoughtful in terms of you feel like you have a person on the team. And then we run, as I kind of alluded to before, these like 3-month cycles where most of the time when we work with somebody after 3 months, they'll be like, okay, and can I just have this person on my team forever? Or can we just like keep doing this? And it becomes month to month where we change with them over time. We're in it, then we're kind of in it with them.
Is that part of your business model? Is the intention that maybe people get hired on full time in one of your clients?
I get that question a lot, understandably so, because there's a mental model for the try and then hire. That's not the wording, but here we are. No. Well, what I always say is we're changing how work works. So you're putting like an old paradigm on this. The generalists that are working in this way actually are supported. They're supported as if they're part of your company, and most small resource teams don't have the like cultural or career infrastructure to support people. Like the learning and development, they can't do that. And so generalists really enjoy working in this way because they're like, wait a minute, I get stability and variety and flexibility and a team that I can continuously learn from. And then the founder side, what happens is they're like, wait a minute, I can have this person on my team and change resources over time and not feel always responsible for that, but also feel like the trusted connection of a team member. And so it like breaks people's brains. They feel it. And then they're like, why would I do something else?
Yeah. Got it.
That's just, it's just honestly what happens consistently. And I understand why people think about it, but it takes a little bit of all right, we're going to trust fall. Like, I'm going to catch you. And then once you're caught, like, I don't know if I want to do this any other way.
Got it. There's another great question from Asia. How does shifting to this org chart-less approach impact how a company thinks about measuring impact and performance? Seems like the traditional, also outdated KPI framework becomes irrelevant in this way of working. Or does it?
In a way, I mean, we're a company of for and by generalist operators, and we still have OKRs, and we still, like we still make an impact in that way. I think you're still measuring impact, but when you bring a generalist on the team, the impact is as much of the learning, the money you save as much of the money as you you spend. Like it's a contingency against the wrong decision versus the right decision too. And so I think we do get very tactical in terms of the quantitative impact of the work that we're doing. It's scoped. We know the things we're going to achieve, and you can see the thing that is achieved in a meaningful way. It just might not look under one function in a traditional way that you.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? Like that's true both for the quantitative and the qualitative impacts, right? That a company might be managing to, right? So you still have owners of the outcomes, right? In fact, that is the pivot, right? To make owners of outcomes, and it's the outcomes that you need to figure out how you aggregate them up to tell the bigger story of your purpose-driven business, for example, right? So it just doesn't sit under the chief impact officer anymore, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, see, we have done it again. We've just chatted for an hour. I had a great time.
I was like, you did tell me it was going to be 3 when we started.
I was just kidding. I mean, I could keep going. This is fascinating. I really love this. Thank you so much for coming on. And what we'll do, as per usual, is send out a summary of what we talked about, and then have a way for people to get in touch with you if they're interested. I imagine there might be some people in the audience who are, look at all the applause.
I know. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I imagine people might also be interested in what it might look like to come work as a generalist. Are you currently recruiting? Are you always on the lookout, or what does that side of the business look like?
Always on the lookout. We have our company where we have full-time employees and long-term contractors of OIT. That's how we sort of maintain both quality and that stable, the different way of working for people. Nice. But then I like to say we drink our own Kool-Aid, because we need to dynamically have resourcing. We have an invite-only collective that we run. And so it's a seasonal cohort of generalists where it's like a give-get model. People are coming in and giving their time, and we give them back a very structured 10-week program where they're connecting with other generalists, learning about themselves, learning about what this work means and what it means to work in a different way. And then that is an entry point for us to then recruit in for the company. We don't do any other recruitment. So if people are interested, we always welcome them into the collective, or like to apply for the collective. And then from there, once there's an opportunity, that's when we'll kind of bring them greater into the fold.
Love that. I love how this is sort of the anti-marketplace approach, right? Because there are some horrible fractional marketplaces where it's just a popularity contest, and this is not that. You're very much humans helping humans, both outward facing to the client and internal facing to how you're recruiting people into working with you. Love this. All right.
We try to be very intentional in all the things. Thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation.
This was great.
All
right. Well, we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you for everyone who attended, and we'll do this again sometime.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.